Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. We are collaborating on match day with Celtic Down Under. I'm Paul John Dykes. Over in Japan, we have Liam Carrigan. Welcome to the show, Liam. How are you doing over there?
Aye, very good, thanks. It's good to be here once again. Looking forward to hopefully a very good performance today.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it absolutely astonishing that over over the 5 years, we have gone from the kitchen table podcast, and here I am sitting in the same kitchen, although it's a different table, and I'm doing it all over again because I can't get out of Fife at the weekend due to traffic disruption. So here we go. Last week, I'm in the car fretting and contacting Laura. I'm stuck in chatting. Laura, thankfully, saved my bacon. This time round, as I say, it's a slightly different environment, but hopefully you will get the same chat from Acsom and Celtic Down Under. There's been quite a lot of conversations through the week. We will revisit some of them, Liam, but let's start off with the team. We'll work through it bit by bit, blow by blow, but what's your first impression of that starting 11?
Well, I like the fact that the back four is exactly as I called it on yesterday's bulletin. As I said that Bernabe should be given a run out because he is looking good. He's getting better with every game. And also, I thought that Ralston might be a good idea just to kind of sort out any Hearts players that decide to get a wee bit naughty.
I like that. The bricky. Get the bricky in. Well, we'll start off with that then, right? Because obviously during the week, since the last game, the focus, you might get one day afterwards to look back on the previous game, Liam. Then the focus goes right on to the next fixture. I know it's a big football cliche, one game at a time, but you focus on the next game. And obviously you listen to all the pre-match and all this kind of stuff. And there was a clip of a Hearts player going on about their approach to playing Celtic. So I think with that in mind, and we'll get to Giakoumakis up top as well, you know, the likes of Moy, Ralston, Giakoumakis, that's the type of player you want in a game like that, if they are basically rolling up their sleeves and going toe-to-toe with us.
Aye. If this Hearts player in question wants a battle, I say bring it on, because we will destroy them if they take that attitude. If they're not, Hearts are the sort of team that Celtic could easily take apart and score, several goals against if they try to get too fly with us.
Yeah. You know this, right? Last week, midweek, I was probably coming across as a bit gallous at best. Because what I was saying is, we've got back into the groove. We're free scoring again. We're playing a lot of good football. We're more clinical, because that word kept getting used. We weren't clinical enough. And very, very rarely do you ever predict a high scoring game. You might feel really confident and say, I think we're going to win 3-0 or 3-1. So I just chucked it out there, Liam. I just said, we're going to batter them 7-1. We didn't, of course. We didn't. It was 4-0. But these high scoring encounters, I do think back to a game, believe it or not, whereby the great Frank McGarvey was at a game with myself. Yes, I'm name dropping him. He's a legend, absolutely. And we were playing St Mirren, right? And I'm not making this up. God is my witness. Frank McGarvey predicted 7-1, and that's exactly what it was. I think it was 7-1. It was that game that Lee Griffiths, remember, he scores a hat trick, and then we break up for COVID. I think it was 7-1. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Someone out there will be able to check that. And Frank got it spot on. I'm not quite as confident today, but what I do want is I want plenty of goals. I want us, because if you look at every single game we've played this season, Liam, there's one thing's for sure: we've always created chances. It's just the case now of converting them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we will get chances today for sure, and hopefully we'll take a few of them. But like you say, Tynecastle is not the easiest place to go. I'd be quite happy with something in the range of 2 or 3-0. But I think if we get a couple of early goals like we did against Hibs, then the floodgates could open.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we'll run through both teams then, Liam, and we'll have a look a wee bit more closely at some of the selections that we've got. Joe Hart in goals. Joe Hart, he went through a kind of a ropey period, let's just say, Liam, and some were vouching for him to drop out and for Siegrist to come in for a run of games. That didn't happen. We know that Siegrist has played in 2 League Cup games. I think that situation's been managed particularly well. What's your thoughts on that with Joe Hart and his performances?
To be honest, I not a lot of Celtic supporters that I've spoken to have said anything about, yeah, Joe Hart made a blunder in the European game, right? It was a blunder, right? It happens. Mm-hmm. But I can't remember who it was, but whoever played the ball back to him in the first place was equally culpable, But the goalkeeper is always the one that gets the blame when something like that happens. And I think, particularly in the Scottish media, there was an attempt to kind of construct this narrative about, is Joe Hart still good enough, whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's because Rangers axed their goalkeeper after one bad game, basically. And the implication was that Celtic should do the same. Difference is we did not get scalped 4-0 by our biggest rival. So I think losing in Europe to a very good Bundesliga team is a bit different from getting gubbed 4-0 in the Scottish League. Mm-hmm. And that one mistake aside, I think Joe Hart has been a solid performer. People said he was a wee bit slow against St Mirren, but so were the rest of the team as well. I don't like it when the team has a bad performance. I don't like it when we single out individuals, because I think no. You play as a team, you win as a team, you lose as a team. So if the team gets beat, maybe I've just been in Japan too long, but it's a collective thing over here. It's like the team prospers and the team endures together,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, without a doubt. And, the thing with Joe Hart as well, you look at the performances, Liam, but you also look at the influence that he has. And I think what was really important, and something that we have mentioned quite a few times on the bulletins and on the match days, is particularly in Europe. Now, I know that's where the big mistake happens, right? But, the starting lineup in our last game there, only Joe Hart had Champions League experience prior to this season. And I think that's huge. You're going into the unknown. The gaffer as well, he's never, in a group match in the Champions League, never managed in that tournament. So I think that to have Joe Hart in there was absolutely pivotal. And he's old enough and experienced enough, Liam, to play through a couple of bad games and come through the other end. And I'm hoping today we're not really looking at that position in the park at the end of the game in relation to the performance, because I've heard this argument time and time again. Yeah, Craig Gordon's doing brilliantly for Hearts, right? But at that, by the same token, I don't regret moving him on when we did, because when you look at his lack of game time leading up to his removal from Celtic, but yeah, it turned out to be bad timing, because we thought we had a deal with Forster, we didn't, and we ended up going out and buying Barkas for big money. But I stand by the decision itself. I think it was the right time for Craig Gordon to move on.
Aye, and you've got to remember that Barkas came to Celtic with a very good track record. I mean, the Greek league is definitely of a, it's not an elite league, but I think it's a higher standard than Scotland for sure. And he had consistently performed well in that league for a number of years before we signed him. So, yeah, sometimes it just doesn't work out for a player, but I don't necessarily think it was Barkas's fault. I think Celtic and him were just not a good fit.
They weren't a good fit. And again, I'll probably bring a Yeti in season 1 into this point. The circumstances around it, Liam, bringing a player in from elsewhere, they're not living in a permanent address, they live in hotels, they can't integrate with the team off the park. So straight off the bat, the relationships, the team morale, the bonding, all the stuff that happens that we don't see, but obviously, feeds into the player's psyche for match day. All of that was kind of missing during that particular season. We'll never know under normal circumstances how those two guys would have done. And, that's pretty sad. They go out on loan. You wish them all the best.
And the frustrating thing is, I fully believe they'll go somewhere else and have very successful careers. Because I think they're both capable, It
wouldn't surprise me if Barkas ends up playing his way back into the international team. Hatate has already shown that he can score goals. He's doing that at a different level and at a different club. And I'm getting a few messages coming in saying that these early kick-off times are great for our Australian fans. Welcome everybody if you're tuning in from Australia. Liam, of course, is tuning in from Japan, although he is part of the Australian podcast and broadcast Celtic Down Under. Always an array of football jerseys hanging up in your wee den there, your wee recording den. I know you're a big football fan, aficionado. There's been a couple of releases this week that have been very interesting, Liam.
I got the so I got the New Japan home shirt behind me, and I've got the Celtic third kit, the cursed grey third kit, which I ordered before the St Mirren game, so don't blame me.
I know you're a big fan of the jerseys, and it's astonishing, isn't it, how a particular jersey can hold such fond or otherwise memories. And obviously, the one again for me, I remember the League Cup final against Kelly as well. And a jersey that up to that moment I really, really loved is just etched in my memory for that particular poor result. But that's the way it goes in football. And hopefully we can wear that grey jersey again and wash away the memories of Paisley. We'll run through the rest of the Celtic lineup. In defence, you were happy with the defence, the way we're lining up with Ralston at right back, Bernabei at left back, and the central defensive partnership of Carter Vickers and Jens. I've liked what I've seen so far of Bernabei. I think he was called a slow burner when Andrew was talking about him and Haksabanovic about a week ago. Liam, how impressed have you been, particularly with his attacking play?
I really think that he it's good to have the options depending on who you're playing against, because I think at the moment, with his experience and his defensive qualities, Taylor is better suited to Champions League games, whereas Bernabei is good for games like today where you want to go out and really aggressively attack the opposition and score a few goals. And yeah, it reminds me, I mean, I'm not saying he's as good as him, but he reminds me a bit more of Kieran Tierney in that sense. Tierney loved to play the kind of overlapping fullback role. And it's something that we tried to kind of replace him with Bolingoli, but Bolingoli did not have the defensive attributes needed for that. But Bernabei shows the potential that he could be that kind of player for us in the years ahead.
What did you make of Kieran Tierney's interview? It's always great, to hear from people like Kieran Tierney. I mean, some of the shows out there, it'd be fantastic if Acsom could secure an interview with someone like Kieran Tierney, but obviously BT Sport have got better contacts than us. And I love hearing players like Tierney. And he was talking so fondly. I mean, that was never in doubt. And he was mentioning about at some point coming back. Well, if he's going to come back, he's going to have to displace Andy Robertson from the left back position at that stage, because he wants to come back as well.
It's just typical Scotland, isn't it? We finally produce two world-class players and they play the same position.
I know. And you've got poor Greg Taylor, whose performances have been outstanding. And I think, in any other era, he'd have been a first pick, but was very, very strong, internationally very strong. I found it interesting. I'm talking here now about Jens and Carter Vickers. Not to forget Ralston. Yeah, totally agree with you. Bring Ralston in for games like this. He's made for games like this. But Jens and Carter Vickers have built something of an impressive partnership at the back. I'm not obviously writing off Carl Starfelt. When he comes back, then that's a brilliant headache to have in terms of selection. But one thing that was annoying me was almost the pedestrian nature of the passing from the two centre-halves when it was Jens and Welsh. There was very, very rarely a pass made to a winger. But that was all blown out the water against Hibs, wasn't it? Because Jens and Carter Vickers kept finding Haksabanovic. I'm just looking here. I'm not sure what this particular graph is called, Liam. One of the statos might be able to tell me, but there is a graph and it shows you the frequency by which a player passes to another player on the park. So it's quite easy to look at and say, right, we're not utilising the wingers from the centre-half positions. Against Hibs, that was completely different. And it carved them open, put them on the back foot, created chances.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see today, actually, looking at that, I'll be interested to see how Maeda links up with Bernabei, considering that him and Haksabanovic really, really played well together particularly in the first half last week.
Yeah, and the thing you've mentioned there about Tierney bombing down the left, people often speak about Greg Taylor and a lack of distribution, etc. But Taylor's had some, incredible stats when it comes to assists. He has last season and this season a very good record indeed. I'm going to move now into the midfield positions where we have Aaron Moy, Matt O'Reilly, and Reo Hatate. Again, I'm going to ask you the question around Moy. You obviously are part of the Celtic Down Under team. Moy's arrival at Celtic was met with a lukewarm response. Which camp were you in when we signed him? I know Jared wasn't a massive fan. Which camp were you in, Liam?
I thought it was a good addition to the squad. I wasn't sure how much of a first team fixture he would be because I saw him as very similar to Callum McGregor. But I think McGregor's a better player overall. I don't think that's really up for debate. But they're different types of players, though, in the way the role they play. But I thought, good addition to the squad, a good experienced player, because our profile of player at the moment kind of skews towards the under 25s. And you need a couple of old heads in there we've got Joe Hart, obviously, but, in front of him, he's got Ralston, who's 23? Carter Vickers is, I think, 23, 24. Jens is about the same. Bernabe is, 21? It's a very young defence. So having an experienced head in the midfield is definitely a good thing. And, I talked about this with Kevin on the show last night. I really don't get this thing that people say, oh, he's got no pace. So what? Some of the best players in world football history couldn't run, right? I mean, they didn't have to because they had the football brain and they had the passing ability, they had the distribution, and they had the vision. So I think Moy's lack of pace, he is a bit slower than the likes of Hatate, obviously, right? But his passing makes up for it, in my opinion, and I think he plays a very good role. But the real standout for me has been the way Matt O'Reilly has stepped in to the more kind of defensive duties since Callum McGregor's been out the team. That completely stunned me. I did not see that coming at all. I didn't think he had that in his game, but he does.
He does. And we had the chat on Monday, Colin and I, because I've been completely astonished like yourself, really. Should have been astonished. He's a great footballer. He's played there previously. I just didn't expect him to adapt in the way that he has done. The defensive qualities that he has shown me, have been superb. And it really just shows you the real quality and adaptability in Matt O'Reilly, a player who I think that I've got to admit, when we signed him, I didn't know a great deal about him. I'm pretty sure Ange doesn't gauge who to buy regarding what I know about them, but I didn't know a great deal about Matt O'Reilly, and he's really, for me, he's been a sensational signing. The price that we paid for him is just laughable. I think Lawrence said pound for pound. It's difficult to figure out who your best signing has been when you look at Hatate, O'Reilly, Joe Hart. Some of the signings, incredible. And a wee word on Reo Hatate as well, because again, I thought he came out the traps absolutely in blistering form at the beginning of the season. There was a wee dip, but I think he's regained it. How impressed were you with his goal the other night as well, Liam?
I think my dad summed it up well when we were talking about it yesterday. He said that's the sort of thing you do when you're 14 years old in the playground and you're showing off to your pals. It's not the sort of thing you're supposed to do in the middle of a professional football match, But it was just the sheer quick thinking, the intelligence, the arrogance of it was just beautiful. It really was.
It was. Audacious. Kookaburra, welcome to the show. You're watching on YouTube. If anyone hasn't already subscribed to the channel, please do that. We're heading towards 20,000 subscribers on there. And if you want to support the channel, you can buy some of our merchandise, hoop, top, Shamrock jerseys, Shamrock trackies, they're all in there. The link is under the video. Kookaburra, I picked the starting 11 correctly, first time since Ange has been here. It is often difficult to predict an 11 when Ange is at the helm. FS feeling much more positive about the heavy rotation than earlier in the season. It's all about the squad. What do you make of the rotation then, Liam? Because I was saying before we came on there, I like the way he's doing it. I didn't like the St Mirren rotation. I felt it was too much, but he's tinkering and he's tweaking it, and it means that all the players are getting the game time that they need.
I mean, the thing with rotation, the most difficult part of our squad rotation system is the first 3 or 4 games, because you have guys coming in who have not played. But it's at the point now where almost everybody in the squad has had a couple of games. And so they can come in and they're already at that certain minimum required level to go in and do a job. I am surprised that Maeda's starting today, to be honest, though. I'm a big fan of the guy, but I thought on form at the moment, Haksabanovic was pretty much undroppable.
No, definitely.
That does surprise me a wee bit, but Ange knows what he's doing, so he's obviously got something in mind.
Absolutely. We'll come to Haksabanovic as well. I've been so impressed with him. Ewan Boy Martin brings up, I'm not going to call it the elephant in the room. We all know it's coming. Ewan Boy Martin. Hail to you, sir. Interesting to see how VAR works today. Tell you, Ange wasn't that bothered about it, was he?
No.
He says he couldn't believe the excitement everybody seems to have over VAR. He wants the refs to get it right first time. Come on, Ange. You've been in the country 18 months. You know better than that. I mean, it is one of the things. You just hope it isn't a discussion point at the end of the game, don't you?
I mean that's the thing. I was saying last night. I went to my first football game in 3 years a couple of weeks ago. The Japan and New Zealand ladies international teams, and that game had VAR, but I think there was like 2 checks throughout the entire game. One for an offside that was clearly offside. I mean, we could see it even from the stand. It was offside. And another for a possible yellow card, and that that was it basically. But as I said last night as well, though, I think that part of that speaks to the fact that the Japanese probably run VAR far more efficiently than it's going to be run in Scotland, but also the fact that the women's football in general, they just tend to get on with it. They're not as theatrical or melodramatic or trying to trick the referee into giving away penalties or whatever as the men seem to be sometimes,
Interesting observation. Did you enjoy the game though? Because it's first time back in 3 years. What kind of precautions? What kind of precautions over there? You still masked up in that, Liam, when you go to the games?
Masks, yes, depending on where you're sitting. There was we were in the stand opposite the benches, if you like, and behind one of the goals was I don't know what they're called, but the Japanese national team equivalent to the Green Brigade, right? The ones that were all singing and waving the banners and all that, right? They were not required to be masked, right. But they were, they bought tickets specifically saying you're going into the singing section, you're going to be in close proximity to a lot of people. There's going to be shouting. It's a high risk area, and it's up to you if you want to take that risk. Now, my wife, for medical reasons, is still scared of COVID. So we went for the regular seating, which is you're still in with a crowd, but you're fully masked, and disinfect your hands getting in and out and whatever. Which in a stadium is all you can really do. Yeah. Besides, an open air arena like a stadium is not as conducive to transmission as, for example, a music concert might be, where it's all indoor. So, yeah, I mean, normality has to come back at some point, and I think that the Japanese authorities are doing it as best as they can, really, in terms of getting the football going. And we've had crowds back in for I think for about a year now. I think it was about this time last year that they first brought back crowds, and they phased it in. It was 5,000 maximum, then it was 10,000, then it was full capacity. I mean, it's only the top 3 or 4 teams in the J League that would have a regular crowd of more than about 20,000 anyway. So it wasn't that big of an issue. But yeah, I think we're doing what they have to do, and I feel quite safe at the stadium. I really enjoyed being back, and I'm looking forward to go into another game soon. Hopefully, I hope Celtic get their backsides over here for a pre-season tour.
That would be good. Here's the two ends of the scale when it comes to VAR. Ewan Boy says that it's interesting to see how VAR works today, but if we look at Peter McKill, he thinks it'll be interesting to see how the officials behave today. So there you go.
Yes,
Scottish football
yes.
in a nutshell. In a nutshell. Right,
Yeah.
so loads of the conversation during the week there was around players like Kyogo, Giakoumakis. You've already mentioned Maeda, the surprise inclusion over someone who's really in form at the moment. And of course, on the right-hand side, we've got Forrest, who dropped out against Motherwell after a brilliant performance against Hibs, where he got a hat-trick, he scores his 100th goal. A couple of conversations during the week on the socials and also on the bulletin. Liam, so I'm going to throw it over to you. John and I spoke about that word legend when we were talking about Forrest, and it seems to rattle people. You know, he's not a legend. How can you put him in the same category as Jimmy McGrory? Well, there's different versions, there's different types, and you just got to look at the roll call, the roll of honour in relation to James Forrest would suggest that he's right up there. I don't know if the right word is legend. He's certainly a great, and it's great to see him back on form.
To me, though, when you're talking about a club, like a football club, as opposed to as opposed to football overall, right? A club legend is somebody who has spent a long time at the club, has made a significant contribution to the club, and I'd say 100 goals is a very significant contribution. I mean, like, case in point, and it's no disrespect to this particular player, right? But you ask any Arsenal fan, is Tony Adams an Arsenal legend? They'll say, oh, yes, no question, right? But in my opinion, a very ordinary, workman-like defender. Nothing outstanding about him as a player at all. But every Arsenal fan would say he's a legend because of his service to the club over a long period of time. And I think it's the same with James Forrest. Now, I think James Forrest is a class player. I've always thought he's a class player. And I'm glad that he stuck around when there were rumours last season that he wouldn't. Because I think, much like Aaron Moy, he's a good, experienced player to have as part of the squad, regardless of who is playing every week. But yeah, he's a legend, I think, in ability and in terms of impact at the club. So yeah, no question. To me, legend is a very appropriate label.
Yeah, I've got him up there. People disagree, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Giakoumakis up top was another discussion point, and that is keeping a lot of people in comments happy. MKM 1990 is quite happy with that as well. Kyogo is a supreme talent in my view, Liam, but there are certain games like today that you think, in that hostile environment, not only the hostility not only coming from the stands, but from the opposition players. But Giakoumakis can rough them up, put him in there into the, for me, into the melting pot, and I'm pretty sure he can handle it.
I would like it if, I think the perfect scenario would be if we can get a goal or two in the first half, and Giakoumakis gives their defenders a good roughing up. Maeda runs them ragged on the wing. And then you bring on Kyogo and Haksabanovic in the second half to run at a tired defence and just rip them to shreds.
Yeah, I mean, it's so doable when you look at that bench. One of the big concerns for periods last season was the weakness that we had in terms of options. But when you look at it now, Siegrist, Taylor, Kyogo, Haksabanovic, Abada, McCarthy, Ideguchi, Abildgaard, and Juranovic. I mean, that bench is pretty frightening. It's a frightening prospect for any opposition team. So is the pronunciation of Abildgaard's name, because I'm aware that I'm not pronouncing that right, Liam, but I will learn the proper pronunciation. I'd like to see more of him. I don't know if today's the day that we see a bit of Ideguchi as well, because, I'm hanging on to your every word with Ideguchi, and I'm not giving up on him yet. I think we will see the player that he can be for us.
Do I think today might actually be a good game for him to come on into, especially if we're winning, because psychologically, and it's horrible that we have to think this way, but this is how Scottish football works, right? Psychologically, it needs for Gucci to have somebody boot him up in the air and he's all right. Then mentally, that's him got beyond the injury and the worry of it recurring. One bad tackle on him and he walks away from it, and I think he'll be a better player and a better man for it.
I'd like to see that today. Loads more to discuss. We'll obviously catch up again at half time or a way to get the action. An absolute pleasure, as always, for Liam to tune in from Japan, representing Celtic Down Under. Match day is a collaboration between Celtic Down Under and Acsom. So I hope you enjoy that. Thanks, everybody, for getting up early, if that's what you're doing. What time is it where you are, Liam? Is it night time?
Half eight. Yeah.
Half eight. If you're in certain areas of Australia, you might be getting up early to watch the game. Fantastic. Enjoy the first half. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. And thank you once again, Liam Carrigan, for joining me on a Celtic State of Mind.
Thank you.